All right, greetings and welcome to another episode of the Unnamed Bracketology podcast. My name is Kerry Miller, joined as always by my good friend Graham Doran. It is Selection Friday. We are 50 hours away, 50, not 1-5. Don't have a heart attack yet, but it's getting close. We're gonna discuss some of the strangest questions on the bracket right now. Graham, I sent you the list earlier. I'll let you decide where we start, or we can start with the one you suggested if you so choose.
Let's go ahead and start with the West Coast Conference. I think both Santa Clara and St. Mary's are interesting to seed. I'm having a little bit of trouble with both of them. And the reason why is because when I look at quality wins for St. Mary's and Santa Clara, they're both pretty much just looking at beating teams within the West Coast Conference. Obviously, St. Mary's got a terrific win against Gonzaga. That was at home. Santa Clara got two wins against St. Mary's. One of them was at home, one of them was on a neutral court. But still, if you don't really believe all that much in St. Mary's, how much do you believe in Santa Clara? And I think, we tied those teams to each other for the bubble for so much of the year. But now that they both seem like they're probably in, it's a seeding thing that I'm struggling with now because I think a lot of the metrics would tell me that St. Mary's should be a 7 seed. But when I look into the profile, I see that one Gonzaga win at home, and I don't really see much else. Like when Virginia Tech looked like they might sneak into the tournament, maybe that win carried a little bit more weight for St. Mary's, but it doesn't now. So I think St. Mary's, when I just look at the resume, not any of the metrics, I see an 8 seed. So I'm struggling with them, and the other team I'm struggling with, like we mentioned, Santa Clara. I just look at them in comparison to a team like NC State. And I see NC State has gone on the road to beat tournament teams. I haven't seen that from Santa Clara. Now, is maybe that a little bit unfair because they play out of the West Coast Conference? Maybe, but I still just don't know if I really trust Santa Clara as a 10 seed. I think they might fall back to an 11.
Yeah, I mean, for both of them, the entire resume is just wins against each other. They have three quad one wins, and that's it. And they all came head to head. Obviously, the big difference being that Santa Clara lost to Loyola Chicago and did not beat Gonzaga. St. Mary's did beat Gonzaga, but yeah, I think St. Mary's is like a less problematic Villanova, who we'll get into in a little bit, where it's just there's not a whole lot of meat on that bone, if you will. But they're top 30 in every single metric. So it's like how much can I drop them, even though they only have these one or two even remotely noteworthy wins? I mean, at least St. Mary's didn't lose to Georgetown by a dozen, didn't lose at home to Creighton, didn't do anything particularly bad. So I'm at the point where I feel like St. Mary's has to be somewhat comfortably above Villanova. Now, maybe that's still true with St. Mary's as an 8 and Villanova as a 10. I don't know. But I think I still have the Gales as my top 7 seed or maybe 26 overall, somewhere in that range. Yeah, I can't see them getting up to a 6. I don't think they'll get penalized as an 8 though. They just feel like a 7 seed at this point. Santa Clara, I think I'm a little worried that we all crowned them a lock too soon. I still have them in my field. I still have them clear of Dayton even, but if Georgetown or Seton Hall wins the Big East, if somebody other than St. Louis or VCU wins the A10, if somebody other than Utah State wins the Mountain West, all of a sudden starts gobbling up these spots. And it's not all going to be ACC and SEC schools. It might be one of these mid majors. I mean, it could be VCU, it could be Santa Clara, it could be, God help us, Miami, Ohio. But I think Santa Clara right now is my last 10 seed. So I think we're in the same spot on the Broncos, but I'm a little bit leery about what could happen the rest of the way if we start losing teams left and right. I feel like it could be a slightly Indiana State like situation from 2 years ago. Well, let's go to another question. We got to go to Auburn, who we jinxed the hell out of yesterday. They were up by 11 while we were recording. Then I don't know when the 20-0 run happened. I don't think it was immediately after we stopped talking, but we did it. We broke Auburn, but they are still right there. You have them as your second team out, I believe. I still have them as my last team in. I hate it. I think it's just a question of how you sort those three SEC teams, which is in and of itself kind of funny. We could end up with the first three out being SEC teams, while like VCU, Santa Clara, and Miami, Ohio are all going to Dayton. I'm sure Greg Sankey would love that one, but that's about what it feels like at the moment. Um, but you've Auburn out. Is it just the 16 losses? I mean, what are you primarily pointing to there in that debate?
I actually don't think it's the 16 losses for me. It's the fact that they had so many opportunities and they converted so few of them. I know that it's a great win at Florida. That's the one that stands out. But if they kept a clean sheet, I might feel a little bit different. But when they lost at home to Ole Miss, that was the thing that opened it up for me as like, okay, now it's not just a tough schedule. There's also you just failing in general. I think they had so many opportunities that you would expect a little bit more, but I'm even willing to give that a little bit of grace if they didn't lose to Ole Miss. I think that was just the thing that pushed it over for me. I still think Auburn is right there. Like, if Auburn's in the tournament, I will not be surprised at all that the committee put them in. I just personally think, given the amount of opportunities they had, I would expect just a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, it's a crazy tough schedule. They played 20 games against teams that are currently in the at-large conversation. That includes the likes of Oklahoma and Texas, who maybe don't get in. So I'm saying in the conversation. Um, and they went 6-14 in those games. And I think to your point, if they didn't have two more bad losses in addition to that, they'd be in probably with plenty of room to spare. Um, but playing those 20 games is insane. Like I was looking at tweeted earlier today. They went 2-10 in their 12 games against the Ken Palm top 16, and SMU, NC State, and Virginia Tech went a combined 0-4 against the top 16. And that's not a metric that's on the team sheets. There's no column in there, but that is kind of a cut line that the committee does fixate on the top 16 for protected seed purposes. And I think they're going to talk about Auburn so much in regard to those teams that maybe that kind of helps Auburn along the cut line a little bit. But just comparing this Auburn resume to, um, 2001 Georgia, which was the last team to get in fewer than 3 games above 500, or the 4 SEC teams who have gotten in at 15 games or with 15 losses, and you like look line by line at the schedule, and what Auburn played is so much more difficult than what those teams did. So I definitely think anybody who's just arguing 16 losses, get the hell out of here with that. That doesn't matter, especially on this year's bubble. But it is a tough call. But I'm inclined to believe that that win over Florida is enough to get them in, assuming no more bid thieves. And again, like we said yesterday, that's probably stupid to assume. But if the cut line remains where it is now, I'm still leaning Auburn. Uh, Pivoting to the other half of that Bruce Pearl debate, Miami, Ohio, who we discussed yesterday, but hadn't really, fully digested, didn't get to see the numbers yet, but now we know that they are still top 40 in wins above bubble, which was that magic mark last year. They are 37 in WOB. They are, I think, 28th in SOR. Where are you at with the Red Hawks at the moment? I almost said Hurricanes.
They're in Dayton for me as the best team in Dayton. Now, when we talk about bid thieves, that could get really close to the cut line by the time we end that conversation. But as we've talked about before, my plan was always if Miami gets undefeated through the year, I'm going to put them as a 10 seed. If they drop one, I'm putting them as an 11 and I'm sending them to Dayton. That's still how I feel about them. I mean, they might be really close to the cut line at the end of the day, but we could argue all these other teams left and right. For me, it's as simple as this. If the WOB really matters that much, you can't leave Miami out. You just can't. And so I think this would be, we talk about Auburn potentially as a team that could show the value of the WOB by saying, hey, they had a positive WOB. They got in. You guys thought 17-16 didn't work. They got in because they had that positive WOB. They barely have a positive WOB. Miami is well clear of the line. I think Miami is in. It's just a matter of whether they get in or out of Dayton, and I think they're going to Dayton.
Trying to look up what their WOB actually is. What is it like? It's close to a 2 still, isn't it?
I think it's under 2 now, but well clear of the 1 spot. I'd have to pull it
See,
up.
they are at a 1.7, so still they're still ahead of Iowa for God's sake in wins above bubble. They're slightly ahead of St. Louis, although obviously that could still change. ahead of Texas A&M and Missouri as well. And then you get down to that right at the 0 line is where SMU, Texas, Auburn, and Oklahoma are. So all these teams that everybody has right on the bubble. Seems like everybody else is paying attention to wins above bubble as much as the committee told us that we were supposed to. Um, but yeah, it's uh, all I'll say on Miami, Ohio is anybody who says anything definitively is full of shit, and you shouldn't listen to them. Like, there's no precedent for this. Um, like we've seen undefeated seasons. Yes, St. Joseph's, Wichita State, Kentucky, Gonzaga. We've never seen an undefeated team anywhere close to the bubble, and we don't have a clue what the committee's actually going to do. We're assuming based on wins above bubble and strength of record that they'll be in. We could easily see them getting left out for having the 340th ranked strength of schedule, the 363rd ranked non-conference strength of schedule, which is always a big bugaboo with the selection committee. 2 games against quad two. I think they're both quad 2B, even at that. Their only win over the field is because Wright State got that automatic bid out of the Horizon League. So it's uncharted waters, but we do. I mean, I agree with you. They are you said best team in Dayton. I will say top seed in Dayton because I don't think they're the best team going to Dayton. I think they could get slaughtered in that first game, but yeah, I have them at, I think 42 overall as the top seed in the first four. We want to let's go to Villanova as we're talking teams without quality wins. Lost to Georgetown last night and lost in a disturbing fashion. Out rebounded by 21, which I think if you had any question marks about them for not having Matt Hodge, they just got a whole lot worse last night. So now they have that win over Wisconsin, which at the time Wisconsin was not good. That looks better now than it did at the time, but they won that game in overtime in Milwaukee, and that is their only win over a top 50 team. They also lost at home to Creighton, lost on a neutral to Georgetown, but somehow they are still top 30 in all the resume metrics. Somehow they're still top 40 in all the predictive metrics. So what the heck are we doing with Villanova, which just has no you try and sink your teeth in it, and it's like cotton candy. There's nothing there.
Yeah, I agree. I think Villanova, when you look just metrically, and when you look at their quad splits actually look pretty good too. They're 10-7 against quads 1 and 2. It looks a whole lot better than one when you watch the team. They don't look like a top team in the country. I don't think they looked like a top team in the country when they were fully healthy. Now they look even worse. And then you throw in the fact that Wisconsin is really the only win that does anything for their resume in a really positive way. I just don't see them as a 7 seed, even if that's what resume metrics would maybe indicate. And I certainly think that even an 8 seed is generous. I have them as a 9 seed, and I feel pretty good about it. I don't know. I think this is one of those where the committee has to step back and say, we just don't do metrics. You think all we do is metrics. Well, we actually do evaluate basketball a little bit, and we think Villanova deserves a 9 seed. That's where I have them. They're one of those teams that I would love to see be a 9 seed, not because I have anything against Villanova. It's because I want to know the committee actually does care about doing a little bit of a deep dive on these teams.
I mean, there's no question at this point that Villanova is the Louisville from last year that you've been looking for. Although Louisville might also be last year's Louisville with the lack of girth on their resume. But yeah, I could see them, like you said, if it is just the metrics, they're going to be a 7 seed. If they really look into it more, even without factoring in the Matt Hodge thing, I think a 9 seed. And if they really look at how they played last night, I think I could see them drop into a 10. And I know there's a lot of that, you know, injuries this season. Holy cow, there's a ton of them. But at least, right, Texas Tech proved they can win without JT Toppin. BYU finished pretty strong over the last week without Richie Saunders. North Carolina, I mean, I don't think they're as good without Caleb Wilson, clearly, but they won a couple of decent games without him. Villanova looked awful against Georgetown last night. And they looked awful in the game where I think they lost by 30 to St. John's in the game where he got hurt. I don't think wins over DePaul and Xavier prove that they are still okay without him. So yeah, I could see them landing anywhere from 27 to 40 on the seed list. I think they're the most, mercurial team out there right now in terms of overall seed. And I don't know what to do with them. I very rarely will drop a team, a full seed line at this point, but I took them straight from 27 to 33 for that one last night. I think that really kicked them to the curb for me. Also, I had to move Clemson up after they beat North Carolina, and I wanted to bump Ohio State up a little bit. So kind of worked out that Villanova gave me that opportunity. The A10, which gave us quite the scare earlier with St. Louis. They were down by 21 midway through the first half. Speaking of jinxing things, I started writing an entire slide on whether or not St. Louis is a lock, and by the time I finished it, they were winning. Went on to beat George Washington, and now I think they probably are a lock. Not sure if Dayton is still beating St. Bonaventure, but if they were to lose to Dayton, that's not going to hurt at all. They'd be fine. But the A10 in general, I I feel like it's trending towards exactly two bids, and we'll see how they get there. What are your thoughts in terms of St. Louis VCU and a possible bid thief out of that league?
I'm not sure on VCU. The more I look at the profile, the more I'm concerned about VCU's profile. I just don't see any win that I can hang my hat on. And very similar to St. Mary's. When Virginia Tech was just barely into the field, I think it helped the profile a little bit to say, all right, we got that tournament team on a neutral court. And now that Virginia Tech's, for all intents and purposes, and I mean truly out at this point, there's no way they're getting selected as my I believe there's no way they could get selected.
We're gonna talk soon. We're pivoting to the ACC bubble after this, but go on VCU.
I just now that I think they're not a tournament team, the profile looks even more flimsy than it was already looking. And then you factor in they must lose to be in the at-large conversation. I don't know. Like, do we maybe see Oklahoma and Texas both get in from the SEC, or Auburn and Texas get in from the SEC? Like, I could see both of them getting in as opposed to VCU. And there's not really, it's not even just like individual wins that I'm struggling with. I'm also looking at just their regular Q1, Q2 record, and that's not that good either. So it's they lack the quantity, they lack the win percentage, they lack the name recognition on any of their wins. I am concerned for VCU getting into the field. I'm not concerned for St. Louis.
Yeah, I mean they are now at least they're 6-7 against quads 1 and 2. They were 4-7 for a while there, and I was worried about that. But yeah, that's I have Miami, Ohio directly ahead of VCU for that reason. If you're gonna drop Miami, Ohio past VCU, you better be sure VCU's wins are good enough to, make that argument. I just feel like Miami, Ohio is VCU without the opportunities. But it's a clean resume. I think Torvik is the only one that has them lower than 47th, which is, the theoretical cut line, 46, somewhere in that range. They're 39th in resume average. So everything points towards that. So I think if they don't suffer a bad loss, I think they're okay. If we get a St. Louis VCU championship, I mean, that's the dream. I think they're in at that point either way. And the committee may well just put VCU as the last team that gets a bye so that they can just, easily switch it in if they end up getting the automatic bid. They don't even have to scrub anything as a result of that game. I think the other kind of straightforward scenario is if St. Louis loses to Dayton tomorrow and we get a Dayton VCU championship, then it's just the winner gets a spot. They get the auto bid and that's it. I don't think VCU can get in that scenario. The tricky one is if it's St. Louis against like a Davidson or something. Could we end up with a one bid A10? Are they just going to scrub VCU all the way out for losing to Davidson? And I think they could. I think that's the disaster scenario for both the A10 and the selection committee is St. Louis against somebody other than VCU. But if VCU wins today and tomorrow, I think they're probably in, but we'll see. All right, we got to go to the ACC now because every freaking year, remember, there's an ACC team that controversially sneaks in. It was Carolina last year. I guess Virginia wasn't that controversial 2 years ago, but we hated them getting in, and then they played horribly, and we were like, "We told you not to put this team in." NC State and Pitt both got in the year before that. You had Notre Dame getting in at 4-9 against quads 1 and 2 in 2022. Syracuse twice, once upon a time. I'm sure there were others that I'm forgetting, but there's always an ACC team that sneaks in. And right now, SMU is on the cut line, and Virginia Tech is I think we all kind of agree on the wrong side of the cut line. Although the more you look at that resume, the less terrible it looks. Like it's the least problematic of the resumes on the bubble. They don't have any losses outside the top 70. They've got two quad 1A wins now. Home against Virginia, at Clemson, 8-13, quads 1 and 2. Granted, 4-13 against the top 70, but no bad losses. Like I could see the committee backing its way into Virginia Tech, which we said at the time when they lost to Wake Forest, like, yeah, I don't think they're getting in, but I can't get rid of them all the way. And I could still see that happening. The other scenario is if we get a couple of bid thieves and everybody's like, oh well, SMU's out, and then they still sneak in on Sunday. But I think one of those ACC teams is going to get in. Do you think there's any case for Stanford or Cal or even of all of them, I'd rather see Florida State, but they don't have the metrics for it.
I think that Stanford would be the one that if there's a surprise, Stanford would be the team. They still have a winning record against quads 1-2, 5 quad 1 wins. Yeah, they lost 4 games in quad 3, but at least they don't have a quad 4 loss. Some of the other teams around the bubble have a quad 4 loss. There's something to say about that. I think if there's any team that really comes out of nowhere to surprise us, it'll be Stanford. That said, I don't think it's going to happen. I think SMU, we talked about it. I don't even remember. At this point, it might be months ago. It feels like months ago if it's not. I really just felt like that SMU half court shot was going to determine who gets in with SMU and Virginia Tech. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think SMU
Yeah.
got in because they hit it. Virginia Tech's going to miss because they hit it as well. So for me, I believe SMU is more likely than not to get in, but it's close. And if there's any bid thieves at all, that could cost them because I just they're so close that I don't know. They might already be on the wrong side of the bubble for the committee's standpoint. For all I know, that's how close it is. But yeah, if there's a team that really comes out of nowhere, I think it's Stanford because at least they're intriguing. In a year where there's so much on the bubble that we just absolutely hate, yeah, Stanford has a lot to hate, but they also have a lot to like, and not many teams around the bubble have a lot to like.
I think that explains why their KPI is 43. They just they punched above their weight class a few times. They took a few bad losses a couple of times, but yeah, I could see them being what was it, 2016 when Tulsa was like on everybody's bubble heading into the conference tournament week, and then they lost early and we all threw them away. And I think literally one person in the entire bracket matrix had them in the end, and they did get in. I could see Stanford being that team. I think I'm going to now panic write a Stanford slide for my power rankings just in case. But yeah, I think I agree with everything you said. I think it probably comes down to that Boopy Miller 2/3 of a court shot from January 14th.
On that note of the Tulsa appearance, they lost by 40 to Memphis. They lost 80-40 in that game, by the way. It still got in. That's why I remember I actually had them in at the time,
Yeah,
and I
so did
thought
I.
they were going to get in, but then they lost by 40. I was like, all right, you can lose, but you can't lose by 40 to Memphis and still get into the tournament, but apparently you can. So I learned something that day.
I think that was the year that they started talking about maybe we should include margin of victory in our sorting metrics. That's when Ken Palm got really big, and then that was a couple years later. What I think there was one more question that I had. ACC, Auburn, Villanova, Miami. The one line. Do you think anything can change? I mean, Florida beat Kentucky today, so that's okay. They didn't take a loss. They'll face either Tennessee or Vanderbilt tomorrow. They're not going to take a bad loss there. I guess in theory, they could take a bad loss to Ole Miss or Oklahoma in the SEC championship still. But if Houston wins the Big 12 tournament, could they still sneak in? Or if Florida loses tomorrow, Houston loses tonight, and Connecticut, I mean, granted, a win over Georgetown does nothing for them, but if they beat St. John's tomorrow in the Big East Championship, could they still get back up to the one line? Or are we pretty well locked in now with Florida as that fourth one?
I don't think we're locked in with Florida as the fourth one. I do think we're locked in with the first three. Don't think
Yeah.
it's any question. It comes down to me for that fourth one seed. Can Florida win the SEC tournament? Because if they do, I think they're going to get it regardless. But There is an intriguing scenario. What if Houston beats Kansas and then beats Arizona? Head to head, Florida played Arizona. They lost on a neutral court to Arizona. Houston could say, hey, you guys lost to them on a neutral court. We beat them on a neutral court. We handed them one of the 3 losses. You had opportunities against Duke and Michigan and Arizona, or excuse me, not Michigan and Arizona, Duke, Arizona, and who's the 4th team I'm missing? UConn.
Connecticut,
UConn.
yeah.
Yeah, you had 3 opportunities against 1-seed contenders. You've tripped up every time. We got one. And I could see the committee thinking that is a differentiating factor there. So I tend to believe if Florida wins the SEC tournament, I just think so much respect will go into being the SEC regular season and tournament champion. And Florida's played so well that they're going to get it. But I don't think it's a guarantee. I do think there's an option if the committee wanted to take it to say, man, Houston just added 3 really good wins in Kansas City. Go ahead and reward Houston. But I tend to think it's not that Florida's a lock. They're just in such a driver's seat that things will have to go wrong for Florida for somebody to pass them.
Yeah, I think I'm at the point where if Florida beats whichever team from Tennessee they face tomorrow, there'll be a 1 seed. I don't I don't think it matters if Houston wins the Big 12 tournament that night and then Florida turns around and loses on Sunday, unless it's to Ole Miss and it's just like an ugly situation and the committee just has to decide to factor in the Sunday result for once. But I think that's probably enough. But it's close. I mean, they're both what 18-5, 18-6 against quads 1 and 2. They both have 4 quad 1A wins. They're both like 4th, 5th, or 6th in every single metric. I think it's close for Houston. I can't see a scenario where Connecticut gets back up to the 1 line after that loss to Marquette. But yeah, I think it could still be up in the air. Uh, Tony Schneider asked, can you remember any recent times the committee has swayed from the bracketing principles? I mean, boy, I remember that one year they had the was it like Cal and UTEP or Cal and UNLV, I think. They like put them it was a regular season matchup and they had them right away in like a 5-12 game or something. They're just like, whoops, we screwed up. Or the year that they forgot that BYU has to play Thursdays and Saturdays, like, whoops, we screwed up. Like maybe they do have too many contingency brackets and they just miss things because of that, but I don't I don't know.
Well,
Anything come to mind for you for that?
yeah, one specific year, 2015, the committee loved Kentucky. And why not? Kentucky was potentially going to go 40-0. They were the Miami, Ohio of 2015. But
The Hawaii
Kentucky
Pacific of 2015.
Kentucky was absolutely awesome that year. And the committee did the weirdest thing. They said, you know what? We got these bracketing principles and procedures, and we're going to toss them out because we think Kentucky's so good that for being so good, they shouldn't have to play anybody but the 8th overall seed in the Elite 8. So they chose to go to the S curve that year, which they haven't done forever. That was not in the bracketing principles and procedures. They just chose to go S curve to try to give Kentucky the easiest path possible because they thought Kentucky earned it. And so I guess if they want to throw stuff out, they can. I thought that was the weirdest thing ever. Like to a normal person, that meant nothing. The fact that they went by the S curve that year, to me, it meant they completely deviated just to get the result they wanted.
I miss the S curve. Such an easier time. But uh. All right, that'll wrap us up. We'll probably be back tomorrow. We'll have to discuss it internally. I'll have my people talk to Graham's people. But let's get a Saturday podcast in before the season ends. It's crunch time. We got to do it. But until next time, take care. Enjoy the hoops. It's going to be an insane night. Friday afternoon wasn't too much, but holy cow, Friday night is crazy. But till next time.